Welcome to our In Focus discussion tonight on the future of Utah's Pantages Theater. Salt Lake City's redevelopment agency may soon sell the historic building to developers for conversion into affordable housing units and a pocket park. But in a last-ditch effort, a group of local filmmakers and their supporters are trying to save it for preservation. Tonight, we explore those reasons and some of the arguments from both sides. Joining us now for a live panel discussion is Michael Valentine with Utah Pantages Cinematic Theater, Casey O'Brien McDonough with Friends of Utah Pantages Cinematic Theater, and Christopher Sipes with Keystone Architecture Incorporated. Thank you all for being here tonight and welcome to the show.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Well, we'll start with you, Casey. For those who are not familiar with the Utah Pantages Theater, formerly known as the Orpheum Theater as well, could you give us some context about its history and role in Utah?
Sure. The Pantages Theater was built as a crown jewel of the Pantages Theater chain at the time in 1918. It was originally built as a vaudeville theater with famous acts like Babe Ruth came to speak there and Abbott and Costello. The theater was a vaudeville theater for a while, and then as the entertainment needs of the country changed, it became a movie theater, even hosting the Sound of Music for almost 2 years, which is of note. It continued to operate as a movie theater until the late 80s, and we liken it to we'll say the sibling of the Capitol Theater. It's just as grand, it's just as important. In fact, it's arguably more important for its history and its cultural relevance in our city and in the in-around West.
Now, Michael, the Utah Theater is a grand movie theater and the last one that exists in Utah. What exactly does this mean, and why do you think this is significant for preservation?
Yeah, and it kind of goes with what Casey just said. For most of its life, it's been called the Utah Theater, but we always call it the Utah Pantages, right? Because it really highlights that this is part of a bigger family across the entire country. So we have a sister theater in Tacoma. There's several in Los Angeles. There's one in Minneapolis. So it's really part of a bigger narrative. I like to call it like, Pantages at the time was like the Versace of movie theaters. So there's really nothing else like it. Like, this was built in 1918, just incredibly ornate, and it was even one of the nicest theaters in the entire Pantages family. It has Alaskan marble floors. There's original Tiffany skylight in there, and it's just something we can't afford to lose. Like, not only is it a crown jewel for Utah and Salt Lake, but it's a national treasure. And one of the people we were working with said it was losing this would be akin to bulldozing Delicate Arch to put in an In-N-Out burger. It's just like, this is a priceless building and something we can't lose at all.
That's quite the analogy. Now, Casey, Salt Lake City's original intention for purchasing the theater was to potentially use it for a Broadway-style performance theater, which ultimately ended up with the Eccles Theater across the street. Now, utilizing it as the home for nonprofit film and media groups was an idea that the RDA later explored with Salt Lake County. This idea was ultimately determined not to be financially feasible by them. What happened from there, and what is happening now?
I would argue that the conclusion that it wasn't going to work for that function was actually a reflection of the city at the time and the city council voting against that idea because it didn't save enough of the theater. Since that happened, the city, I think, has changed focus with the previous mayoral administration and hasn't been listening to their constituents, which want the theater saved. If you look into the downtown master plan, this theater is the only building specifically listed in there for repurposing and saving, which the city is ignoring. That's a document adopted by the City Council in 2016, the same year that the Eccles Theater opened.
Now, Michael, tell us about why you came into the picture and what your efforts are in trying to save the theater.
Yeah, so I'm a local filmmaker. I've just always loved movies. I've volunteered at Sundance, just kind of my thing. I've known about the theater for a long time. I think I went by about 10 years ago or so. Just stumbled upon it and found out what it was. I've actually toured in it, been inside. We brought the whole family there. It's just incredible. I think that was about 8 years ago. So I always just loved it, and we were always under the impression that the city bought it to see it restored. So in 2018, 2019, when we first heard about this deal with LaSalle and Hines to see it torn down, it really shocked me. And I went and met Danny Waltz, the head of the RDA, And since then, you know, I've just been doing everything I can to see it saved and restored. It kind of started with just me. You know, we met Casey, we met Chris, and now we've built, like in the last 2 years, a national team of experts to really help us on this subject. And you know, I just see it as a treasure we can't afford to lose. And you know, I made a promise to the city and the community and in the future of film in Utah that we'd save this and see it restored and reopened. It's something I am very committed to doing. So.
All right. Michael, Casey, and Chris, hold that thought. We have to take a quick commercial break. But when we return, we'll resume our In Focus discussion on the future of Utah's Pantages Theater. Thanks for staying with us for our second In Focus discussion tonight on the future of Utah's Pantages Theater. Before the break, we were joined by Michael Valentine, Casey O'Brien McDonough, and Christopher Sipes for a live panel discussion. We pick up now right where we left off. This time we'll turn to you first, Chris. Now, you've stated that you see the theater as the future crown jewel of the Sundance Film Festival. What does this mean, and how does it play into concerns that Sundance may one day outgrow Park City and maybe move the event out of Utah altogether?
Well, both Michael and I have talked about it pretty extensively, but in talking with the League of Historic American Theaters, one of the people that was on that board that provides data had already been in discussions with Sundance and how they've already outgrown what's in Park City, and they're looking to expand space. So they worked on a development of a plan to create an entertainment district in Park City. The big thing to think about with this theater is, and the thing that Sundance has interest in, is they're looking for a theater that can hold more than, you know, maybe 500 people or so. And this used to seat 2,000, 2,200 people. Naturally, in the renovation with today's standards, you wouldn't get that many people, but this is one of the few spaces where you can hold a very large event like Sundance would be looking to do. And it's not that far of a drive for Sundance because they have several events that are down in Salt Lake City anyway. So they're already partially here, but to have a destination theater of this size for special run screenings and things like that would be completely something that they want to move forward with.
Now, Michael, the RDA estimates that restoration and rehabilitation of the theater could cost as much as $60 to $80 million. How much funding have you and your group secured for rehabilitation of the theater if you were to obtain ownership of it?
Yeah, so I always kind of laugh at the RDA numbers because like every time we see it, it goes up like another 20 million, you know. It used to be 60, now it says 60 to 80, so it's like we just don't agree with those numbers at all. And it goes into what we've talked with, not just us, but on a national level with Tacoma, our sister theater up in Washington, the League of Historic Theaters. So what we really want to do, and what the point of was us making an offer, and we've been trying to get access to the building forever. I have a construction crews on standby. You know, Chris is our architect. We want to get in and get a second opinion. You know, we don't trust these numbers, and we want to get new estimates because they don't really match reality in the rest of the country.
Now, Chris, counter arguments include that there are already too many theaters in Salt Lake City, and that the Utah theater is too expensive to rehabilitate. Mayor Erin Mendenhall once stated that it's very far gone, it's not a good space, mentioning that she once fell through one of the floors during a tour. What is your response to this?
I think there's a couple different ways to look at it. It's, if you're looking at creating another Eccles Theater, certainly that's not our interest. The building is not sufficient for that. Really what it's appropriate for is cinematic projections, movies, things like that, and events too, events that draw people in. If you've ever walked up and down that street at pretty much any time of the day, it's awfully quiet, where you know, it used to be that people would line up along Main Street just to get in to see a show. So, you know, the big point that we want to say is that if the city had taken care of it over the last 10 years, you know, probably we wouldn't have had people falling through floors. But in the bigger picture, this building is 100 years old. I've worked on buildings that are 150, 200, even 250 years old that have been in much better shape than, or much worse shape than this theater is. So there's really, the logic behind it is maybe there were some interventions that have been made over the course of time, but it survived since 1918 through countless events, including a 5.7 earthquake, and the thing's still standing. So that tells me that, you know, we're talking about not a complete restoration of a building from the ground up. It's more about renovating what's there and making sure that it's stable.
Casey, let's bring you in. Other counter arguments are that this space would be used to build affordable housing for residents making between 60 to 80% of the area's median income, and the developers would foot the bill to maintain and ensure public access to a pocket park. Why do you think preserving the theater would be more beneficial to the city than adding affordable housing and downtown green space?
I think in the context of affordable housing, if they were to accept our offer, for instance, they could take the monies that we're offering and spend that directly on affordable housing. It's also, I think, important to understand that affordable housing isn't permanent. It has a term. I can't remember exactly how long. I think it may be like 40 or 50 years, and then it goes away. As far as the public amenities they're providing, the city and the developers talk about those amenities as if they're only to benefit the public. And while they're trading those public amenities for the money they could be getting for the theater, those public amenities make that project more valuable for the developer. Our theater is going to, I think, provide amenities to everyone all the time. And it's going to offer a cultural and historical connection to the past that the city has a very limited amount of right now, right, as development continues and we continue to tear things down that are as important as this.
All right, Michael, Casey, and Chris, hold that thought. We have to take another quick commercial break. But when we return, we'll resume our In Focus discussion on the future of Utah's Pantages Theater. To our third and final In Focus discussion tonight on the future of Utah's Pantages Theater. Before the break, we were joined by Michael Valentine, Casey O'Brien McDonough, and Christopher Sipes for a live panel discussion. We pick up now right where we left off. Casey, we will start with you first in this segment. Can you tell us a little bit about the voter initiative and what the voter initiative would do?
Yes, the voter initiative is our way of highlighting the importance of this theater and the Capitol Theater. We think those two theaters downtown are our most important historical theaters down there. In fact, they're the last two major theaters that remain. So we want to make them city landmark sites and highlight how important they are. I think obtaining the signatures for that voter initiative is going to be a clear reflection to the city that the voters and their constituents want us to save and restore the theater.
Chris, let's talk about the potential cost for rehabilitating the Utah Theater. How much do you believe it would cost, and how does that compare to the other options that the RDA wants to pursue?
Well, it's kind of difficult to give you a bottom line amount at this point without us having had any professionals to be able to be in there. I mean, we can firmly say, based on the conversations we've had with the League of Historic Theaters, Tacoma, some of the other developers we've talked to, that the cost would be significantly less than 60 to 80 million, because we're focused on renovating the theater space, which is about 25,000 square feet. It's not like we're trying to build a huge digital hub out of the gate. What we're really trying to do is say, hey, listen, this building is significant. There's like 230 some buildings on the city historic register. There's only one theater on it. Most of them are residential properties. So Utah Pantages would be the second theater on the list of historic properties. But in the big picture, we would be looking to use, let's just say, it's called delicate renovation, where we're not looking to tear apart the whole thing. We're not looking to, what we're looking to do is to make sure that it's structurally stable, and then we're working on it over phases, over periods of time, so that we don't have a huge investment in seismic renovations and building fixtures, things like that need to be done right away. That can be done later. We would phase them over the course of time to make it economically viable.
Another question for you, Chris. What have other cities done, and how has that worked out for them?
Well, we know we've been mentioning Tacoma quite a bit, and it's because we've had several different conversations with them, because their theater is very similar to ours. Basically, what we've found in several of these instances is these theaters become part of a little bit of a creative hub, as you will. There's a space in Cleveland we were talking with the league about that, where several different arts functions happen in several different buildings. In the case of Tacoma, they host live performances pretty much all year round, and they were over the course of 8 years, they were able to do their renovations and keep the theater open and running. And that's run by the city. That's not run by private individuals. And what we're trying to do, or what Michael is trying to do here by purchasing this building, is to say, hey, listen, the city's had 10 years to work on it. We understand the constraints of public funding. It's time to let it go to private development but not private development to create a whole new building and a whole new use, rather to just renovate and improve and actually make sure that what's there stays there and is usable by the public.
Now, Casey, there are insinuations that the current agreement between the city and the Hines and the LaSalle group is close to being a done deal, but obviously your team doesn't think that it's too late to save the Utah Theater from demolition yet. Why not?
You know, I think if the city can take a step back and realize that the constituents want the theater saved, I think they've lost sight of what they were, one of the reasons why they're voted into office. It's interesting, the agreement that they signed with Hines LaSalle was pretty much pushed through at the end of the last administration's time in office. And part of that agreement basically gives Hines as much time as they need to obtain city approvals. This is an unusual term to put it in any kind of a real estate agreement, to give one party as much time as it takes. It puts the city at a great disadvantage. It means the property continues to increase in value and the city can't take advantage of that. There's all sorts of reasons why this agreement is a bad deal for us as residents of Salt Lake.
Now, Michael, you've requested a formal meeting with Salt Lake City's Redevelopment Association, or the RDA, to discuss your offer, ideas, and proposal in more detail. What is the status on that?
Well, it's not going great so far. So we went live, went public, on March 19th. We had a press release. I wrote a 4-page letter of intent. I emailed it to the media, the city, everyone on the council. Right after that, I called every council member directly on the phone and left voicemails saying, hey, I would love to talk to you about this. We had our attorney formally request a meeting. I think at this point they're just afraid to talk to us because we've been doing the RDA's job better than they have. We found a way, and working with a national team here to save the theater in an economical way and make sure it lasts for a long time. We'd love to talk to them. We want to have a public meeting and talk to the whole community about this openly. And it's funny too, they kind of frame this in a situation that we don't really know what we're talking about. So, I request, it's like, if I don't know what we're talking about, me, Casey, and Chris don't, let us come talk to you and you can shame me in public. We'd love to talk to everyone about this and just really bring the public in of what we could build this theater to be and how we can save and restore it. I think it's a very important conversation we're very excited to have with them. Hopefully soon.
I'm going to throw a question in here for Casey really quick. The RDA said that prior to entering the current agreement, they engaged more than 50 representatives from local and regional arts, business, community entertainment, municipal, and other stakeholder groups, including Sundance, in an effort to find a financially viable way for the theater to be saved. Casey, do you think that that was enough input from the public and the community?
I don't. I think the city, and I keep hating to throw the last administration under the bus, but I think the last administration lost sight of what the constituents want. The downtown master plan, which included thousands and thousands of hours of public input, specifically calls for the reuse of the Utah Theater, which I believe is the citizens saying they want it saved. All that input they got, we're getting we're talking to those same people, many of those same people, and the input we're getting is that they wanted it to be saved. They were ready to move forward. But the deal that they were involved in was not voted or approved by the RDA board or the city council at the time. And once that occurred, they became demoralized because the city stopped dealing with them and trying to find a way to work with them to save the city.
Michael, we got about 30 seconds left. What do you want people at home who are watching to know?
Yeah, to me it's funny, the city and the RDA, they refuse to talk to us. They wouldn't come on the show to talk to us right now. They paint us in a certain way, but the vast majority of people that talk to me and send me messages on Facebook and in our Instagram pages are, people over 60 years old that have personal stories with the theater. And this is really the legacy that we're saving. So it's funny to me why the mayor won't talk to us or thinks that this theater can't be saved. It's their parents and grandparents that we're making friends with, and it's their legacy we're trying to build off of and protect. And then it's not just about history. Like, we're trying to build this into the future of what Utah film can be, what Sundance can be, what all these things can coalesce together and really create a space for cinema and film and arts to really flourish across Utah and Salt Lake and even the entire country for decades to come. So there's definitely a way to save this theater, and we're not going to give up until it's safe and on the pathway to restoration. So.
All right, you've been hearing from Michael Valentine, Casey O'Brien McDonough, and Chris Sipes. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight on the show. We appreciate your time.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Now, we did reach out to Salt Lake City's redevelopment agency as well as Hines and the LaSalle group to join our live discussion tonight, but they either respectfully declined or didn't respond to our request. However, we did receive the following statements. Salt Lake City wrote, quote, "The RDA is under contract with another entity for the purchase of the property and is conducting due diligence accordingly. Thus, we will not answer any questions about our current agreement or obligations." Regarding the voter initiative, the city wrote, quote, "The city has received the application for the initiative regarding the Pantages and Capitol theaters, and as required by Utah law, is processing and analyzing it." Hines issued this statement to us, quote, "Hines is a 64-year-old family-owned firm with a proven commitment to excellence and integrity. We care deeply about creating projects that improve communities since 1988. We have demonstrated this in Salt Lake City with stewardship and preservation of the historic Kearns Building on Main Street. We are confident that our project will enhance our great city with significant public benefits, including much-needed affordable housing, a family-friendly park that can host outdoor film, theater, and live music, public art installations, a mid-block connection, and preservation to honor the theater's legacy."